Hello, and welcome to either a new video game story time or talking point, because I am trying to actually, when I realise that it's not going to be so much a story, say that it's a talking point, but to be honest, this kinda could be both. So, at the end of the day, let's see how I actually go and what I end up titling it in the actual thumbnail thing and everything. Not that I actually do thumbnails, because honestly, who has the time for anything like this? Again, this is a hobby channel. But today's episode is either a story, but also a talking point. Like, I think it's going to be a mix of both. And this is why I knew I'd eventually come up with a new name for things. And now even that's going to add complications, because of course it does. I sometimes feel like I do this intentionally, and I know I don't. It's just my broken brain. But anyway, I am also going to be very rusty on this because I have not played this game in a fucking long time. I'm actually one of the few heathens who kind of doesn't really like Pikmin 4 as much. I mean, it was okay, but I truly do feel Pikmin 1 is still the best. Although I would love a remake on the engine of 3, then Pikmin 3, then Pikmin 4, then Pikmin 2. But the reason that I actually wanted to load this game up is today's episode is essentially going to be the inconsistency with repeated content. Or maybe should say the hypocrisy, because it's one of those, it's not so much that I feel people are being hypocritical, because I myself am about to explain the problem, and it's affecting me as well. So, there's a lot of people out there who, when they played The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and then The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, would complain quite vehemently about the fact that so much of Hyrule was the same, despite the fact that there were a lot of differences. And hopefully this doesn't come off as spoilers by now. It's the sort of thing, if you don't want to know any spoilers about those games at all, I guess maybe don't watch this video, because I'm going to have to mention this, otherwise this video just has no context. Basically, you get Hyrule in Breath of the Wild, you get Hyrule in Tears of the Kingdom. There's a lot of minor differences, some major differences, but yes, there is a lot of repeated content. Now, that's kind of understandable for me, because at the end of the day, they both take place in Hyrule. But you also get the depths in Tears of the Kingdom, and you get the Sky Islands in Tears of the Kingdom, and you get a bunch of new content. And I always felt people were a little harsh with just how much new there was. It made it sound like a lot of people would make it sound like there was barely any new content, and I always felt that was unfair. But then we have Spider-Man. Now, obviously, that's not a Switch game or anything, but we have Marvel Spider-Man, Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, and Marvel Spider-Man 2. The Insomniac games that are currently... Maybe there's going to be a third one, we don't know, and we know they're doing Wolverine, and they might do a Venom game, but for the most part, the 3 Spider-Man games all take place in New York. Of course they do. It's Spider-Man. It's kind of one of the most famous things about Spider-Man. It takes place in New York. And a lot of people complain when there's a new Spider-Man game, if New York isn't changed enough, you're playing in the same sandbox and all that. And I don't understand it, because again, it's New York. Like, you can't really do much to New York other than just create new areas for missions, and that's what they do. And I feel these are reasonable things. But then we have the other side. Part of why I don't like Pikmin 4 is I don't like Pikmin 2. And that may sound weird, but Pikmin 4 has got a lot of content ripped one-to-one from Pikmin 2. There's, basically in Pikmin 4, they brought the tunnels back. The underground tunnels. And that was something I didn't really like in Pikmin 2. And as I was playing through it, I was like, am I actually playing the exact same tunnel as what I did in Pikmin 2 here? And at first I started to be like, well, no, it's just, what can you really do with tunnels to make them unique, you know? Like, I might just be thinking one brown tunnel is the same as another brown tunnel. But then the actual, if memory serves, it's one of the very final areas in Pikmin 2. It's a very infamous area for me, because I actually had some pretty severe glitching going on that made that part of the level way harder than it should have been. So it's kind of burned in my mind. And when I hit that tunnel in Pikmin 4, yeah, it was like, yeah, I was right. They are just repeating a bunch of tunnels. And because I didn't really enjoy Pikmin 2, I'm not really happy that they're adding a bunch of the repeated content here. But yet, no one really complained with Pikmin 4. And I'm like, well, hang on a second. Everyone was complaining with Hyrule, and everyone complains with New York, so why are people not complaining with Pikmin? And this is what essentially this episode's about. And I think I am actually going to load Zelda, because truly, I have not played Pikmin 4 in so long. I forgot they had like a World Hub thing and everything. As you can see, I'm literally in the middle of downloading an update. So I genuinely think I'm just going to load Mario Kart instead, because that is actually where I was next about to bring up. Because that's another game where there's so much repeated content. And no one really cares. Because, if anything, we actually complain when Mario Kart doesn't have old tracks in it now. And this is a weird... I think the word's dichotomy that I'm thinking of. This is just a weird... If the word isn't dichotomy... I can't even say it now. If that isn't the word, then I don't know what is. And this is not going to make any sense. So I'm just going to say that is definitely a weirdness that I have noticed. That depending on your viewpoint and depending on the kind of game, tends to really fucking matter. Because the thing that both of those have in common, the games that I was saying where people were complaining... they're both huge open world games. Apologies for this. I truly cannot play Mario Kart without Y being my accelerate button. My hand cramps so badly, it's unbelievable. I don't understand why Nintendo removed that, because that was actually something in Mario Kart 8. That's where I first discovered that my hand cramps severely by using A instead of using Y. Apologies for the tangent. So, yeah. I honestly think it's with open world games that people specifically were complaining. Because, again, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Spider-Man, big-ass open-world games. Except Mario Kart. And yes, Mario Kart World, I understand. A lot of people do not actually like the open-world part of it. And I've got an entire video about all of this. But this is still an open-world game. And I don't really have a closing point for this entire video. And the rest of it's just going to be waffling here. Because this is one where... I knew I had the topic idea, but I didn't know where I was essentially going to go with it after I hit the Mario Kart point, because I'm genuinely confused. I don't understand. And obviously, not every game is every gamer. This is the same as how like people can't make generalizations, because it's not everyone who complained. I didn't complain with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom's map being repeated. I didn't complain about the Spider-Man map taking place in New York every time. And I quite like seeing old tracks in Mario Kart. And again, I'm one of the few people who doesn't actually like Pikmin 4, and in part because of some of the repeated content. But it really is weird and confusing why certain games and certain genres seem to be able to get away with repeated content, and we accept it as just a thing what it is. I mean, look at Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. That used a lot of repeated assets, but not a lot of repeated content. And then you've got games like Halo, where loads of people absolutely adore Halo. One of the reasons that I never really was the biggest fan of the original Halo, and maybe that video will be up by the time this goes up, maybe not. Either way, I do have a video about it as well. Halo, if memory serves, the original version, because I know they've done a bunch of remakes, and I know one of the remakes is actually adding content as well. But the original Halo, if memory serves, was 11 missions, and it was like Mission 1 was unique, then Mission 2, 3, and I want to say maybe Mission 4 was basically Mission 10, 9, and 8 in reverse or something. It was basically, you would go through the game from point A to B, and then as soon as you hit B, you had to go back, partially go back to A, so it would actually have you going in reverse through certain missions, and I'm like, this really is just the same mission, but in reverse. And maybe that's being a little harsh, but that's always the way that I saw it. I saw it as, I've already done this, I'm just doing it in reverse now. And again, no one really complained about that with Halo, but it was something that always stuck out to me. So I don't understand what it is with people and our different brains, because I would understand if it was more universal and everyone was like, you know what, I dislike that with Halo. I dislike when Mario Kart brings back old tracks. I dislike when Pikmin reuses old tunnels, just the same as I dislike Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom having the same Hyrule, or Spider-Man taking place in the same New York. But it's never that simple. And I truly cannot figure it out now. And I figured that by talking about it, maybe I'd actually come to a conclusion, but I am genuinely stumped. I don't understand why some games can get away with it and some games can't. And there doesn't even seem to be any defined rule set for what games are allowed to get away with it and what ones aren't. Because I know fine well racing games might seem like the biggest exception here, and maybe they are, because it's not just Mario Kart, but there's a lot of racing games where if you play an F1 game, you're going to want the actual tracks that the Formula 1 races are racing on. That's repeated content, that's not new content. So, like, but that's then a case of, that's a real life racing game with real life people racing on real life, you know, versus Mario Kart where I'm driving as Peach on a train motorcycle whilst having shells thrown at me. I don't understand where the venom and vitriol comes from with people with repeated content when we allow it in other games, and maybe there are people out there who truly do hate every single ounce of repeated content, but instead it does feel like there's a lot of times where you can get away with it. And Resident Evil Requiem just came out, has a lot of fan service, and actually does repeat some fights. I need to be careful, and again, if you don't want to know any spoilers for this, I guess maybe this is the time to bounce, because I'm still going to try to be vague. But there are 2 fights that happen later in that game. Because I'd recently played through Resident Evil 3, the fights almost feel like ripped 1-to-1 from Resident Evil 3. And one of them I actually really enjoyed, and I thought, you know what, you've built on what you did with Resident Evil 3 here. But one of them, it was quite a noticeable downgrade from the fight in Resident Evil 3. So yeah, this is definitely one of those things where I'm glad I actually did the video here, because I do think there's a lot of nuance here, and I would love to hear people's takes on it as to where your personal line is with repeated content in games, when you think it's okay, when you enjoy it, when you think it's expected almost, because that's the other thing. Now, we have actually had multiple Spider-Man games set in New York. There are a lot of comics where Spider-Man goes to different places. So I think now if they did a third New York, even I wouldn't really be okay with it, because at this point I'd be like, you know what, we've actually done a lot here. We've had a lot of moments where we've saved New York. We've had a lot of been the saviour moments. We kind of need the spin-off now. And it's the exact same with Zelda as well. I really do want another open world Zelda game, because Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild have been my favourite games since Ocarina. They've been the first 2 that have truly came along that have made me like really love the genre and the franchise again. But even I am at the point of, I don't really want it to be in Hyrule again. I'd quite like to see Termina. I'd quite like to see Lorule. I'd quite like to see Dark World. I'd quite like to see a brand new area. But even I would be at the point of, I mean, I'd be happy. I'd play it. I truly would. But at the same exact time, if I knew for the 3rd game in a row exactly where Death Mountain is, exactly where the Lost Woods is, exactly where Hebra Mountain is, exactly where Lorelei Village is, you know, I might have messed that up. It might have been Lurelin Village that I was thinking of, and Lorelei. I might have mixed the 2 of them together because of the name Lorelei. I'm pretty sure that's what I've done. But I would be at the point of, you know what, I would quite like a new area here. So even I have my limits with those. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of new ones, and I would like to know other people's takes on this. And with that, I'm going to say, I truly do hope you have a great rest of your day, and until next time, bye!